Welcome to lesson 4-4 on changing a decimal to a fraction and a fraction back to a decimal. Today's goals, students will be able to write a decimal as a fraction, and you will be able to determine what Joe Schmo's grade was for Chapter 3 assignments by writing the fraction of points he scored correct, converting that fraction to a decimal, and converting that decimal to a percent. Alright, so let's get started. Here is our vocabulary. We wrote this down last chapter, but just to review. So first we have a terminating decimal, which is a decimal that has an end. It terminates. So the name really does make a lot of sense. So you can see some examples, 0.1455, stop, 0.54, stop, 0.5, stop, 1.693, stop. So those all have an end. You can tell me what the last digit is. Now a repeating decimal, on the other hand, is a decimal that has one or more digits that repeat. So a very common one that you will see is 0.33333. Now, good for you to memorize now that that is the fraction 1/3 when you see 0.3 repeating. But we're not going to write it like this. We're going to write 0.3 with a line over it. That tells us which digit repeats. For this one, the 1-2 repeats over and over again. So we did 0.12 with a line. And in the last one, 0.84222222, the 2 is the digit that repeats, so we only put a line over the 2. So I just wanted to review that because you'll need to know that for this lesson. All right, we're going to start with a T-chart. So if you will go ahead and copy this T-chart on the front page of your notes, I would like you to do this with me. So pause the video, get your T-chart set up, and we will get started. All right, so changing a decimal to a fraction. A lot of people have trouble with this, but if you follow the steps, it really is pretty basic, and it is something that you can definitely do. So here we go. Our first example will just be this decimal right here. What we're going to do is we're going to read the decimal. So step one is simply to read the decimal correctly, that is. So if I were to read this decimal, I would say 8/10. Now you don't need to write this part, but what I would say is 8/10. Now, if I close my eyes and I think fraction, I know that there is a fraction that is also called 8/10. So all I have to do is close my eyes, think about what I just said, and write that. So 8/10, if I'm thinking fraction, then this would be 8/10. So it would just be the 8 over the 10. Let's try another one. If you have 0.89, how would we read this decimal? I would read this as 89 hundredths. So I'm going to write 89 over 100. So you can see we're just reading the decimal and then writing the fraction that we just said. Now, a really important piece of this is to simplify your fraction also. So let's go ahead and go back to do that. So we'll write step 3 is to simplify. You never want to leave it like this if it can be simplified. So 8/10 I can divide by 2, and get 4/5. Now 89 hundredths, that is simplest form, so we are finished. All right, let's try a decimal with a whole number. So how about 1.004? All right, so again, I'm going to read that decimal. 1 and 4 tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So this is going to be a mixed number. A mixed number has a whole number and a fraction. So 1 and 4 over 1,000, or 1 and 4,000. So again, this decimal and this fraction, we would read exactly the same. And then I can simplify this. I can divide by 4, divide by 4. So I would end up with 1 and 1 over 250. So that is how you change a decimal to a fraction. Simply read the decimal, write the fraction that you just said, and then simplify your answer. All right, how about changing a fraction to a decimal? So if you haven't already, you're going to need to pause and make a second T-chart here. All right, so we have talked about this already this year. When we want to change a fraction to a decimal, let's say we have 2/5. We are simply going to think of this as a division problem. We know that this is another way to say divide, and we're going to divide going down. So this problem is going to become 2 divided by 5. Now you're going to do this on your calculator. You don't have to work this out. But if I go ahead and type on my calculator, 2 divided by 5 and equals, then I am going to get 4/10. So 4/10 is the same as 2/5. All right, if I do another one, how about 1/3? Again, on my calculator, I'm going to type 1 divided by 3. And now you will notice on your calculator you get 0.33333, and it goes on and on. So we're not going to write that. We're going to write 0.3 repeating is the same as 1/3. Now one more example I'd like to show you really quick. I'm going to go ahead and erase my first example. Let's try 2/3. All right, we're going to do 2 divided by 3. We divide down. This is a division sign. And that's on my calculator, it's going to look like this, 0.666666666, and then eventually a 7. Now what I want you to understand is that this is not a terminating decimal, even though it does seem to stop. You have to remember that your calculator can only go so far, so it has to stop. So what it does when it runs out of room is it rounds this last digit. So when it looked at the 6 and 6, it drew the line, it peeked over the fence, it saw that there was a 6 next door, and it rounded this up to 7. So I do want you to recognize that this is actually 0.6 repeating, that we would write like this. It is not what it looks like on your calculator. It simply ran out of room. All right, so let's say we get a problem like this, which you will. Order the decimals and fractions. So sometimes you're going to get a list. We've ordered 3 decimals before, but what if you have a mix of fractions and decimals? Well, the best way to do this, in my opinion, if you have a calculator handy, is to just change them all to decimals. Since we feel really good about that, a lot of people find it easier to compare decimals than they do to compare fractions. So we're going to change these two to a decimal, so that's your step 1. And then we can line up the decimals and compare, or just do that however we feel comfortable. So for this one, I'm going to do 4 divided by 5, and then here 2 divided by 3. Okay, and I have those values. So we have 8/10, 65/100, and 0.6 repeating, which is going to be the same as 666, etc. So let's go ahead and look at the tens place. We have an 8, a 6, and a 6. So one of these two is going to be our smaller number. This is 6/5, and this is 6/6. So this right here is going to be our smallest. So we'll put that as our smallest value. And then we know that this is going to be next, but since it asked us to order these 3 values, we're going to write that as 2/3 and then 4/5. So that's just a little tip of how to order 3 numbers or more if some are decimals and some are fractions. All right, so we're going to try a little game here. You should have this in your packet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the 3 dice. We're going to create a decimal, we're going to say it, and then we'll write that as a fraction. So here we go. All right, we have 3, 3, and 4. So go ahead and fill that in. All right, we'll do the first one together. Now let's say it. 3 and 34/100. So now that we said it, we're going to think fraction. I'm going to say it again while I write my fraction. 3 and 34/100. Now if you feel good about simplifying, take that extra step. I'm going to divide both of these by 2 and have 17/50. So go ahead and do that if you feel good about that. All right, let's try the next one. 5, 2, and 5. All right, let's read it. So here's our decimal point. So this number is 525, and the 5's in the thousands place. We have no whole number, so 525 thousandths. And I can see that both of those will be divisible by 5. So I could go ahead and do that. All right, and I actually realized I could divide them both by 25, so my simplified answer was 21 over 40. All right, I'm going to go ahead and create these next few for you, and then I want you to do your best to solve them. So our first one will be 14 and 3/10. All right, then we have 4 and 66 hundredths. 0.611 and 15.2. So go ahead and pause the video. See if you can, step one would just be to write those as a fraction, and then the bonus would be if you're able to simplify those. Go ahead and give that a try. All right, so make sure that you're ready. If not, please pause it now. And here are your answers. So go ahead and see how you did. All right, so let's move on to Joe Schmo. At this point, we're going to go the other way around. We just changed decimals to fractions. Now we're going to change fractions to decimals. So you are going to be able to find out what percent Joe Schmo got on the assignments we have done so far in quarter 2. And this was done last year, so they are not exactly the same. So this is what my kids did last year. To do this, you will first make a fraction. That will tell you how many points you scored out of the total number of points for the whole assignment. So we know, we've talked about this year, that we can write every score we get on a test or quiz or assignment as a fraction because it's a part of a whole. You got part of the assignment right out of the whole number of problems. So remember that fraction bar means to divide. So what we're going to do is look at, and you have this as well, so this is assignment number 3. So we're going to go over here, look at assignment 3, and this tells you how many points it was worth. So you can see that this assignment was worth 15 points right here. So he scored 13. So he got 13 out of 15. So you're going to need a calculator for this. So on my calculator, I'm going to go ahead and solve 13 divided by 15. So remember, we have to divide down, and then I will find out what that equals. Alright, so I pulled the calculator up here, as you can see, and we're going to go ahead and type in 13 divided by 15. Alright, so you can see what we have here. This would be a repeating decimal. We have 0.86 repeating. So how I would write that is 0.86 with a line over the 6. Now, in order to find percent, for our purposes today, we're going to round to the nearest percent, which is going to be the hundredths place. So since this would be a 6 if I kept on going, if I wanted to round to the hundredths place, it's going to be 0.87. Then what we do to change a decimal to percent is we move the decimal over 2 times, or we do it times 100, and that would give us 87%. Let's try the next one. Assignment 4, we can see was out of 21 questions, so we're going to create our fraction 17 out of 21. Then we're going to go ahead and divide down. So 17 divided by 21, and that is equal to a really, really long decimal. You can see that it actually does start repeating 523,809, 5238. So it does repeat eventually, but let's go ahead and again, we're going to round to the hundredths place. So we'll do 0.0809. If I want to round to the hundredths place, we're going to take a look here. So we're going to say 0.81. Again, let's do that times 100, and he scored 81% on that assignment. Right, this is assignment number 6, so go ahead over here, and you can see that that's out of 20. So 15 out of 20, we're going to divide. Here's our division sign. 15 divided by 20, type that on our calculator. And we get 0.7. Whoops, move the whole thing. That gives us 75 hundredths, or 0.75. All right, we're going to do that times 100. Again, changing a decimal to a percent, you just multiply by 100, or as you can see, we're moving the decimal over twice. So that would be 75%. All right, I'd like you to go ahead and try to finish this on your own. The answers for this will be in the answer key. So you can correct that when you correct the rest of your packet. All right, so good luck with the rest of the lesson. Feel free to review this or the review videos or the online textbook videos if you need more practice. Good luck.